What's up, everyone? It is your girl Gel Beauty 87 here, aka Grace, and today we are going to get into 5 alternatives to limited edition palettes. So I did one of these in the past, and you all told me you really liked the fact that I found alternatives to things that were really similar to other things that you really wanted but didn't get your hands on that were permanent. So I figured I'd go ahead and do another one, especially with Angelica's palette coming back in stock, and if you don't get a chance to get it, then I have an alternative for you for that as well. So I will save that one to last. So let's get into these palettes. I'm gonna start off with a blush palette because, you know, I felt that that'd be a nice twist and surprise, a blush palette. So let's go ahead and start off with that one. So I have the Weekend Vibes Bellini palette from BH Cosmetics. If you all know, they were bought by Makeup Revolution, so you don't know if the form is going to be the same. So here's what the inside of this palette looks like. As you can see, not many colors work for me, only the 2 on the end work for me, but I think I ended up getting this for like $2 or $3. So I was like, the 2 colors on the end working for me for $2 or $3 I guess will suffice. But you have the Rouge Romance by Jacqueline Cosmetics. This is the peachy version, so I figured this would be a good alternative, and I feel like more colors in this work for someone my skin tone. So if you're my skin tone and want these colors, Jacqueline's palette will work better, and since Jacqueline's palette is permanent, I believe, and I know this one is now, you know, going to be going away because it's, you know, made by BH Cosmetics, and you don't know what Makeup Revolution is going to do. So I feel like it would be a good alternative, so that's why I included this. Don't quote me, but I feel like this was partially a part of her permanent line, not limited edition. I'm not 100% sure though, because I don't really keep up with the brand like that. So next palette I have to talk about are the Melt Holiday palette, the Mariposas one, up against the It's a Mood palette. I feel like they are somewhat similar enough to where you can get similar looks, but please remember that I did switch mine around a little bit, so it's not gonna look exactly the way that it's supposed to, because y'all know I'll change the color pop palette in a minute. Look at the packaging on this. This is a nice weighted, heavy palette. This one is pretty weighted as well, but it doesn't have a mirror in it the way the Mariposas does, and it doesn't, you know, look exactly the same. Mine looks more similar to this one than yours will, just because I added pinks to it. If I remember correctly, there were no pinks in it, there were only dark burgundy shades. This is them side by side, but I feel like it could be a somewhat good alternative because it does have a lot of the deeper, grungier tones that are in this palette in this one that I didn't have to add in, so just keep that in mind. But it's just an alternative, and thought, especially since the Melt one is like $75. Not to say Melt isn't worth $75, it's just if you want to spend $75, then you might want to go ahead and get the It's a Mood palette, because ColourPop always has a sale. And I think this one is at Ulta now, which means you can use a 20% off coupon when it does get here, and then that'll be still halfway decent deal. Next, I have the Vanessa palette from Juvia's Place alongside the Biba palette. So I believe the little Biba palette is permanent, the mini Biba, and I feel like it gives somewhat of the same colors. If you're a lighter skin tone, the Biba one will probably work better for you, and if you're closer to Vanessa's skin tone like me, you would like Vanessa's palette better. I actually haven't used this palette yet, but I felt like the Biba palette looks similar enough to where I could see, and you see what I'm saying? Like, this is like the brown girl friendly version of the Biba palette for people my skin tone. But if you didn't get a chance to get Vanessa's, you can always get the Biba palette, and it'll give you a similar color story, and then you don't have to buy the big Biba palette that's like $129. So that's another alternative. And then the last 2 I have to talk about are actually from the Legendary Diversa collection. So I found a dupe for Tina's palette. Now, it's not going to have those special shades that they picked out on their own in particular in the palette, but it will still have a somewhat similar color story. And actually, one of you all mentioned this to me, because I did a look with the Indigo Ink palette from Menagerie, and then I did a look with Tina's palette, and somebody told me that they thought the looks were really similar, and that's when I looked into it first, and I was like, yeah, they do have a lot of similar tones. So this would be a good alternative if you didn't get Tina's palette. Like I said, it's not exact, so this is Tina's palette and this is Indigo Ink, but as you can see, it does give somewhat of a similar color story, enough to where you could get similar looks with it, and I did a similar look with it, so that shows it right there. But this is what both of them looks like. So if you didn't get your hands on Tina's palette, don't be on Bakerie trying to pay somebody $75 for a palette that was only like, I think Tina's palette was like $32.90 or something like that. Don't pay somebody $75 for that, because somebody was trying to sell a Nets palette for like $200 when I checked on Bakerie today. The last one I have to talk about, which like I said before, is supposed to be a dupe for Angie's palette. Now, this is not an exact dupe, but it does give somewhat similar colors, to the point where I feel like if you have this palette and the Tinkerbell palette, then you have Angie's palette, and I think it's close to the same price as Angie's palette. So this is both of them. This is in the Limelight from ColourPop, and this is the Hella palette with Ozai and Angelica. So when you see the color stories, you'll see what I'm talking about. This and this, you see how the tones are somewhat similar. They're even on like a similar background. They're not exact, but they are somewhat similar. So I mean, I feel like you could get similar looks from the top part, and you just wouldn't have the bottom row and like the bottom deepening shade. But if you're of a fair to probably medium or light medium skin complexion, you can use this palette and be fine. I prefer Angie's because of course I am deeper, and Angie uses deeper colors in hers, just like I would use deeper colors on my outer V. So that's why I prefer Angie's over this one, because there's not enough depth in this one for my liking. But as you can see, the colors are somewhat similar. You all will see a look with this before you see this video most likely, but I figured I would show it as an alternative because Angie's palette comes back March the 22nd, and if you don't get your hands on it, I want you to have an idea of alternative one. So if you have the Tinkerbell one and this one, I feel like it'll be a good alternative to Angie's palette, because you have the deeper tones that are in Angie's palette, and then you'll have those lighter, brighter tones that she has along with that brighter, darker, olivey, greenish nude shade that's in this palette. So those are the 5 alternatives I have on this go round. I'm already trying to look up new alternatives. Like I think I found one for the Moonspell palette by Manny, so I'll show that in the next video along with some other palettes. But I hope you all enjoyed this video. Remember, you all are diamonds. Let me know if you thought any of these were like spot on or close enough to where you didn't need to have the original palette, or that they would be a good alternative for you because you didn't get a chance to get the original palette. But I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Remember, you all are diamonds. Be blessed, girl. Bye.